or if you need to come back to it later, because there's going to be a lot of information. And we're so excited that you're all going to be here for today's webinar on crisis engagement. Our presenter today is Matt Lehrman of Social Prosperity Partners. And we've invited Matt to share 12 tasks on how to sustain donors in turbulent times. His presentation is scheduled for about 24 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session. And of course, some of you have already used the chat function to introduce yourselves. You can put your questions in there or comments at any time, but we'll definitely get to those towards the end. So be patient while we get to your questions, and maybe it'll be answered throughout the rest of the webinar. Later today, we will, per usual, of all of our LASTAGE chats, have this up on thisstage.la, and it'll have this recording and links to how to get in contact with Matt. And feel free, for those of you that think this would be helpful for other members of your team who maybe couldn't be here today, send them this video. We want as many people as possible to get this information. So with all of that, we're really excited to be here, or at least I'm really excited, and I hope that bleeds through the Zoom screen. And we'll go ahead and hand it over to Matt.
Thank you, Michaela. And you can hear me just fine, right? Good. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure to be with you. Wish it was under happier circumstances, but let's take what we can get. Today, we're going to talk about crisis engagement, 12 tasks to sustain donors in turbulent times. And let me just answer the first question you're going to have, because we're about to go through a ton of information, and you're going to ask, can I get a copy of those slides? And the answer is yes. Just take out your cell phone now or at any time at the end of this presentation, or if you're watching it on a recording, anytime afterwards, and just text the word tasks, T-A-S-K-S, to the number 66866. It's an automated system. It will ask you for your email address, and then you will automatically get an email that has a link to the slides, and as well a number of other resources that we're going to talk about over the course of this webinar. Let's get into the meat of crisis engagement. We are, all of us, experiencing a moment of disruption and stress, and it's going to be for a period of time that is uncertain. So this is for ourselves, it's for our organizations, it's for our communities, and this presentation is going to be appropriate to this level of disruption and stress. There's a saying that says you can't teach someone who's drowning how to swim. So we're going to approach it like this. There's no new paradigms here. I'm not here to rock your world. A friend of mine calls this systemized common sense, and that's what we're going to focus on today, is just how do we get through this moment? And this moment is not the new normal. You'll know when we get to the new normal. The new normal will be when we feel stability in the now, we can organize our resources for what's coming up soon, and we can plan for what's coming later. This is not the new normal. This moment that we're in is the raw normal. And I call it the raw normal because we spend our days just trying to understand what's going on, make adjustments on the fly, and frankly, at the end of the day, we should be happy just that we survived. That's the raw normal, which means that our focus today is on fundamentals. And I want you to think of fundamentals as if you were a first responder or an emergency room physician or someone in the military or a great athlete. That is someone who, in a crisis moment, doesn't even consciously think about what they're doing anymore. Rather, their training kicks in and they just know how to respond as if by instinct. That's what we're going to try to accomplish today. So this presentation is an espresso shot. It is 12 tasks in 24 minutes. I hope it's interesting, but mostly I care that there's something that you can take away from this that is actionable. And after about 24 minutes, and let me emphasize, about 24 minutes, I'll decaffeinate and we'll just have a Q&A and we'll just open up this conversation, and happy to do that with you. So let's get into our 12 tasks, understanding that our lens here is all about donor and supporter relationships. If you have other responsibilities, you've got responsibilities for facilities and budget and team management. Someone else is producing a PowerPoint on 12 tasks for those. We're only today looking at donor and supporter relationships. This is task number one. It's take care of yourself. And to take care of yourself, I want you to make this your mantra: inward, outward, forward. Now, I can't hear you, but I want you to say it out loud with me anyway. Inward, outward, forward. See, if you can be mindful and purposeful of those three things, then you're going to remember on a continual basis through these raw times that inward means you have to take care of yourself. You have to eat right, you have to exercise, you have to walk around the block, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your family. You need to be in touch with them and know what's going on with them, and reach out to your friends and even your neighbors around you. That's inward. Outward means that we have to be mindful of how we're speaking to our team and our volunteers and our board members and all the beneficiaries of the work that we do. And when we're competent about being inward and outward, we're ready to move our organizations forward, which is the communications that we do with our donors and supporters and stakeholders. And let me just say, the goal here is just to realize that we all have gaps. There are gaps in our thinking and in our execution. And I'll give you my example, because as I was preparing this presentation, it occurred to me, my wife and I moved into our house about 1.5 years ago. We had downsized. We'd been in our old neighborhood for 28 years. We moved into a new neighborhood. We waved to our neighbors on the street, but we did not know them by name. We didn't have their contact information. And when I got to this point of inward and how we need to take care of the people around us, it prompted me to write a little letter, which I then taped up to the front doors of the 10 houses closest to us. And it basically just said, we're home, we're friendly, we're always willing to help. And we gave them our name, our address, our phone number, our cell phone number, our email address, all the contact information. And a lot of our neighbors got in touch with us as a result. In fact, I then put it on social media at #10neighbors. It blew up on social media so much that it turned into an interview on the local TV station. They interviewed me by Skype, and it became a whole valley-wide little campaign. It wasn't anything really special, other than it was just when you have that mindful moment and you can fill in the gap, there are opportunities in there. Okay, that was task number one. This is task number two, which is about delivering actual care to your team. And I want you to think about this as if we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You see, in good times, in regular times, we run nonprofit organizations, and the unity of purpose that we have as an organization is possible because we have the attention and the care of the people on our team, of our staff and our key volunteers, because we can assume that their basic needs and even their psychological needs are being taken care of. But in this moment, we can't make that assumption. So my task to you is to reverse the polarity, if you will, to deliver actual care, not just empathy, but actually reach out to all of your team members and make sure that you're giving them attention. This does not mean just send an email. This means an actual phone call, an actual computer visit with them, to give them attention and see how they're doing, to check in with them on a human basis, and then to go even another step and don't assume that their basic needs like food and water are being taken care of. We work with people who may be limited cash flow or who are vulnerable to this virus and to the situation that's going on, and maybe shouldn't be going to grocery stores and going out. In other words, don't assume that these people are taking care of themselves. This is a great time to go tribal and make sure that the mission of your organization is about taking care of your people in a very clear and specific way. And that gets us to task number three, which is about mobilizing your volunteers. You see, again, in good times, your volunteers are a community of purpose. They love your organization's mission. They invest themselves deeply in it. So obviously, you need to keep your volunteers abreast as your programs change. I'm sure you've already done this, but I want to challenge you to go one step further. This is a moment in which you can transform your volunteers from just a community of purpose to a community of care. And a community of care means that these are people who are looking out for each other. So my advice to you, go and identify, you know who they are, the 3 or 4 volunteers who are your best activists. Chances are they've done this already. That's what it means to be an activist. They took the initiative on their own. But check in with them anyway and see if they need any prompting or guidance or support in this work. Wouldn't it be great if your volunteers could self-organize and reach out to every volunteer who you currently have? I'll go you one more step. If they could go back to every volunteer who you've had with your organization in the last 3 years or 5 years or longer, that is, create that phone tree, create that contact list so you can go back to all those volunteers and ask them how they're doing and offer assistance to them that is personal and proactive and practical. You know, there's a quote that we attribute to Maya Angelou, who said, "People will forget what you said and they will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Now, I have no scientific evidence to back up this next claim, but for all the commitment that your volunteers have invested in you, I believe that in this moment, if you demonstrate a degree of authentic care to your volunteers, that is going to bounce back for you tenfold when times turn around again. This is a moment to make your volunteers feel that you care about them as much as they have always cared about you. Here's task number 4. This is a critical moment to safeguard your donor management systems. And I want to talk about it in 2 different directions. The first is simply security, which is your information backed up? I mean, all your records. And I don't mean just, is there another digital file or a digital file that's been downloaded onto someone's computer? I want you to imagine, as unimaginable as this situation is, an even more unimaginable situation. What if the person who you rely on to do data entry and to pull reports out of your system, what if that person becomes sick? What if that person can't touch your system for 3 days or a week or a month or longer? What happened? So where is that information resident? That download of that information needs to be on multiple people's computer, 2 or 3 at least. And I would also suggest not just in electronic form, but put it in a paper form as well so that someone has some raw data to pull to in a worst case scenario. I want you to protect your server. The folks at LASTAGE Alliance know that, in fact, inspired by their work, years ago, I founded a service organization here. I'm in the Phoenix area in Arizona, and I ran a service organization. And one morning, we came into the office, a window had been broken, our server was stolen. And the police told us this was not about the hardware. These people wanted identity theft. They were going to break into the hard drive and pull information, which meant that I had to send out an email to all of our audience members and donors. And I had to say, hey, if someone contacts you looking for your credit card or anything like that, it's not us. You don't want to be that organization in this moment. If your server was stolen or if your information was stolen, you don't want to have to send a message out in this moment that says anything other than have complete confidence in us and you should contribute to us in this moment. I also want to talk about your processes. You're obviously fundraising in this moment, which means that you're receiving credit card acknowledgments by email and automatic deposits. And you may also be receiving checks in the mail or a series of subscriptions or ticket sales for next season. Whatever are your processes for accounting and for donor recognition, first off, I hope your policies are written. This is a really good moment to get those written policies out and share them with your team and make sure that everyone is abiding by them. And whoever is responsible for quality control on that is actually doing their job. And I want to make this really important point. In times of crisis, you don't compromise on your fundamentals. You rely on them. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. In times of crisis, you don't compromise on your fundamentals. You rely on them. You know if your fundamentals are strong. If they are not strong, now is the time that you need to make them strong. You don't want to be the organization that a month from now, because of sloppiness or malfeasance or anything, that you have to go back to your donors and explain that something bad happened. this is the moment where you need to be protecting yourself in all possible ways. Okay, let's move on. This is task number 5. I know it's the task that you hoped it was going to be number 1, but you got to get those other things taken care of. Task 5 is call your largest donors. I'm sure you started to do that already. My point about calling your largest donors is this is the 20% of your donors who are responsible for 80% of your contributions, you know, the 80-20 rule. Whoever is the person who has the relationship with that donor, that's the person who needs to reach out to them. Not multiple people, not 5 people all working off of the same script. For your largest donors, the contact has to be personal. That means genuine and sensitive and singular. And the most asked question I get is, yeah, but what do I say to these people in this moment? And here I have a sequence of 3 questions for you. 1, how are you doing? How's your family? It's a basic human question. Some people are going to say, we're fine, we're okay. Some people are not going to answer that way. You only proceed to question 2 with the people who are okay. If people are unnerved, if they're worried, or whatever they are, it's a human response. You're not asking them for money at this point. You're not even doing your agenda. Deal with their agenda. But if they're okay to get to the second question is, what is your sense of the future? Some people have a clear vision of what's going to happen, and it's positive. Some people are negative, and a lot of people are just uncertain. Your job isn't to change their mind. Your job is to meet them wherever they are. And if they're in an okay place or a somewhat positive place or better, then you're ready to go to the third question, which is, where do you see needs or opportunities for our organization to be of even greater service going forward? Now, I want you to note that I have not put out a really negative question. I have not put out a question like, wouldn't it be terrible if we went out of business? Wouldn't it be terrible if we couldn't produce our next season? Wouldn't it be terrible if we had to lay off all these wonderful people? I mean, I know that those are real challenges, but I want you to think about the emotional seed that you're planting with this donor, because this is not the last phone call you're going to have with them. So I want you to think about what's the feeling they're going to have the next time they look at their cell phone and it's you calling and they see your name on their caller ID, and they're going to ask, and they're going to have an immediate reaction. We want the reaction to you to be that you are the bright spot, the hope, the positive ray of sunshine in their moment. Not that they're going to look at your name and associate you with fear and worry and dread. We have to plant a positive seed. That's why we ask a positive question. Here comes task number 6. You obviously have to inform and involve all of your donors. You've already let them know about the closings and changes and cancellations. I recommend a footnote in every communication to the Centers for Disease Control so that we are always pushing people back to factual scientific information. But beyond that, there are 2 other messages that are really useful to convey. One is a continuity of purpose. That's the kind of sentence that begins, now more than ever, our theater company is responsible for this, or it's important that people have this opportunity. A second message is that you can share a beneficiary's perspective with your donor. Help your donor see this current situation, not just through their eyes and not just through your eyes, but through the eyes of your beneficiary. Who is your beneficiary? It could be your actors, the people who are relying on this for their income. It could be the children who come into your performances, or the elderly people that you perform for, or the outreach that you do, wherever is your beneficiary. Help your donors see the world through their eyes. Think of this communication as an exercise in empathy. Let me give you a couple of examples. This first email, literally as I was preparing this presentation, came from a nonprofit in the Boston area called Families First. And I just want to highlight 3 quick things in it. Look at that number 1, that bold statement. Our team is working diligently to continue supporting families. Not that we're pivoting to it, we're already doing it. I just love that we are already in the works. 2, they put 4 bullet points that are just so clear. We're maintaining contact with parents. We launched a new page on our website. We're joining with other community partners, and we're rolling out new online video content. This is not rocket science. It just shows that they are already moving forward, because I love point number 3. Because of our network of supporters, we are able to pivot quickly to respond to the current situation. Do you see that they're not waiting? They're not going to their donors and saying, hey, if you help us, we can do this. They're already at work doing it. I love that kind of directness. Someone's going to ask the question, but what about desperation? I mean, we may go out of business. My point to you is simply this: nobody's need to get money inspires anybody's wish to give money. And I'm going to give you a really frank example, and I don't do this out of shame, because desperation is a choice. That is, there are organizations that need to put out a desperate message. But I saw this message come out from a performing arts venue. I'm not going to name them. I don't really want to shame them. But this is the message I read in the press release. Quote, "It's difficult to predict how much we'll lose, so we're mounting a multi-million-dollar emergency campaign for lost revenue and sunk expense." Now, I got to tell you, that's about as plain vanilla and uninspiring as a message I've ever heard. Who doesn't have lost revenue? Who doesn't have sunk expense? And who else can't predict how much we will lose from this situation? I mean, that could have been anyone, anywhere. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be desperate. I am saying that desperation is a choice, and it should be used in a very limited fashion. And we can talk about that more in the Q&A. I suggest strongly that you avoid binary choices. It's not just a question of will you or won't you donate. It's a question of how would you like to support us? And if you're not making a cash donation today, give them an option. Would you like to pledge a dollar amount in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? Or would you like to be a volunteer for our organization? In other words, give them a reason to say yes. Give your donor some way to continue a relationship with you that is meaningful to them in some way. When you are sending out an email campaign or a direct mail, whatever you're doing, I really want to caution you to watch out for changed sensibilities. So look at this wonderful email I got from Shutterfly. The words are beautiful. As we face the uncertainty of the current moment, we're all in this together. We're grateful to be part of your family. But look at the picture. I mean, does anyone look at that picture and not think those kids have germy hands and there's viral load going there? I mean, come on, Shutterfly should have known. They could have found another photo somewhere for here. Take a moment, and if you're sending out a campaign, sit it down in front of a friend, a loved one, someone who can look at it with fresh eyes, and just ask, are we missing anything obvious here? Because chances are there is something in here that is just out of touch with where we are at this moment. Here's task number 7. You have to start getting smarter because your donors are in a different situation. My adage is learning is leading. So you've got your survey monkeys and other online ways of asking questions. This is the perfect time to ask your donors and your audience members an online question and resist the temptation to do it all at once. Do 5 or 10% of your audience every couple of weeks or every month and ask the question, how are you doing? Like, give them a 1 to 5 scale. Because over time, wouldn't it be interesting to know that in the month of April, we got a lot of 1s and 2s, but by August, we were back in the 3 and 4 range. We're looking for that kind of trend over time. So how are you doing? Let's ask them, what in your words, what makes our organization's mission especially important now? Get them to write testimonials for you, because those fresh testimonials are great to include in future fundraising campaigns, and they won't sound stale. They are of the moment. And then give them the opportunity. Where else do you see priority needs for our services? This is the same essential questions we were asking our large donors, which is, help us see the world from another perspective. Where do you see opportunity? Because if you're a donor to us and we're aimed at the same goal, you're going to see that we can be an instrument to pursue that objective. I have more to say about that in just a minute. Number 8, I have to be honest with you, is the hardest one, I have to say, because I don't have an easy solution for you here other than don't give up, because there are some really hard things for theater companies and performing arts in general. And I put the picture of the muddy road just to make the case that you got to get your vehicle down this road, and there is no way to do that without getting muddy. It's going to happen. So you had people who were coming to special events, galas and golf tournaments or whatever. They were coming for a fun relationship. They were coming for an entertainment. And now you want to keep their money or postpone it and hold on to it or rededicate it, which means you have to get them to a position of caring. And I don't have an easy solution other than to be conscious of it and don't give up, because there's not an easy way to get through that. You've got funders who, again, golden rule, they have the gold, they make the rules. There's no end now of articles of municipalities and public sources and grant makers who have been very generous, who have released restrictions and put more money out there for the organizations they support. This is all about a helpful dialogue with the funders that you have. And if you don't have the examples of other funders who are behaving in this generous and expansive way, if your funder needs to hear that, then you need to have some examples to show them, and you should be able to do that. And lastly, you've got your audiences. Obviously, you're trying every which way to hang on to that money. Please let us apply it to your next season, or let us convert it to a contribution. My only advice for you is just don't presume that there was a charitable intent when they bought that ticket. They bought that ticket, it was earned revenue for you, and it meant that they were looking to get some entertainment from it or to get their thoughts provoked in some way. So your ability to offer some intangible value, find some way to keep them entertained. There's obviously a lot of people going onto YouTube video content and the like. That's all part of the equation. If you can just tickle their entertainment fancy a little bit, you stand a better chance of being able to keep that money. Here's task number 9. It's appropriate to make space for your vision statement. Now, every nonprofit I've ever worked with has a mission statement. We understand the mission statement. It's the core purpose of what you do. It informs the programs that you do. But the vision statement is the ultimate statement of what you want to achieve. So if you were the Alzheimer's Association, we understand that the mission is to end Alzheimer's, and you do that by global research and risk reduction and quality care. But the vision statement is simply a world without Alzheimer's. And if you're the California Arts Council, the mission has this downward energy. It's about strengthening arts and creative expression as tools. But the vision statement has this upward lift to it, envisioning a California where all people flourish with access to the arts. And my point for you is, this is a moment of sanity for you, because there is no question that our programs have been disrupted and we don't know when we're going to get back to them. But your vision is still valid. So for yourself personally and for your team, I recommend making space just to go back to the vision statement, even if it's for as little as 12 minutes every single day. Like, put it on the calendar, 3 o'clock every day, we take a vision break. Make an alarm for it. And you know what, I would love it if at the end of this, if you would type, if you know your vision statement, to type it into the chat function here on Zoom, and we can come back and look at those. But I imagine that in your vision statement, there is something productive that you can do in this moment. And when you can identify it and articulate it, you're going to discover that donors are going to be excited by it too. Here's task number 10. I want you to remember what hasn't changed in this moment. What hasn't changed is the reasons donors support your organization. They support you because they have confidence in your organization. They feel that you make a difference. You are personally significant to them in some way, and they feel connected either to an individual or to a community in some way. If we were the Godfather, and the Godfather was doing fundraising for your organization, you know, the Godfather's quote was, "It's not personal, it's business." The Godfather would have been a lousy development director, because in development, we know that the reason people give is it's personal and it's business. That is, they give for their own reasons as well as they give for your reasons. But keep an eye on the Godfather here, because in 3, 2, 1, I switch the picture, I reverse him, because even though there are some things that haven't changed, we have to respect what has changed. And so I reverse this, because what's changed is the donor's perspective, their capacity and urgency and priority, even their sense of loyalty to you and your organization may have changed. So we have to reverse the Godfather quote. In this moment, if they're not giving to you, it's not business, it's personal. they still love you, they still respect you, but something has changed from their perspective, and we need to recognize that and respect it. Task number 11, we have to ask better questions. I'm going to ask you, go back and look over all the communications your organization has sent out over the last month or two at this point, and ask, have you positioned yourself merely as a beneficiary of your community's generosity? If you look back at those communications over the last couple of months and the essential message of them is, help me, help, or help us, then you're positioned merely as the beneficiary of your community's generosity. A better question is, what is your organization's opportunity to contribute to the recovery and health and collaborative spirit of your community? What is your organization's opportunity to contribute to the recovery, health, and collaborative spirit of your community? If you can answer this question, then it's not a help us message that you're sending out. It's a, how can we help? Here's how we can help. And people are looking for what you can do, not what your history is, not what the mission is in theory. It's what can you do in this moment. It's an important transition to make. And finally, the 12th task is about taking collaborative action. And you know, we often say that we're stronger together. In fact, Michaela, I want you to unmute yourself for a second, because before we started, I was asking you about this. I said, you know, we believe we belong to LASTAGE Alliance and other associations because we're stronger together. And I always say now is the time to prove it. But isn't there something right now that LASTAGE Alliance is suggesting everyone should be doing?
Yeah, something that we're pretty excited about that we were able to pivot really quickly thanks to Mark Dorr, our IT wizard, is that we have thisstage.la, which is our performance listing site, has now been adapted to work for online events. So a lot of our folks, we've been really inspired by how creative they've been and the different types of performances they're doing. So Onstage is still a resource that's available for you. So we ask that you do continue to list there and continue to market that platform, because it still has theater and it's still the one-stop shop for theater in LA. And we want you guys to remember that resource is for you. So
that's great. So you've created this forum that in an online environment makes it easy for people to find it, which is great, because I've been going all over Google and YouTube looking for things to do and to spend our evenings with. So great job there. I'll bring you back into the conversation again, Michaela, in just a minute. But I want to finish this task by saying that the future is unknowable. We're in this moment of uncertainty, but the future is also malleable, which means that you can take action today that is going to have a magnitude of effect as we go forward. So again, to that sense of how do we take collaborative action, I want to invite you. I've created an online Facebook group called Crisis Engagement. I think I was just telling Michaela, this is the 14th version of this webinar that I've delivered in the last 3 weeks. And I've done it for all kinds of nonprofit organizations, from arts and culture to social services to animal welfare. And I've invited everyone who's done this, and there are about a couple hundred people now who have joined this Facebook group. And my hope for it is that it becomes a place to make sense of the raw normal, a place to ask people what they're doing in their organizations, what's worked for them, what has tried and failed. And so if you would like to be part of that kind of a conversation, I invite you to come to this. You can find it by typing Crisis Engagement into the Facebook search bar, or when I send you the PDF slides at the end, I'll send you a link, an invitation to that as well. Okay, the final point I want to make is about I want to return back to where we started, this mantra of inward, outward, forward. Look, the current crisis that we're in requires that we can't be together right now. We have to wait. We don't know for how long. And tragically, that means many of us are prevented from delivering on our missions, and we're incapable of serving the beneficiaries who really deserve and who may even need our services more than ever. But let's make no mistake, we will certainly get back to work. And on that day, the people who need us are going to need us even more. And so if we can't perform right now, and we can't rehearse right now, and we can't do special events right now, there is something that we can do, which is we can contact our donors and our supporters and our audience members, every single one. we can put in front of them a message that is relevant to this moment, a message that says, here's how we are helping in this moment. And if that is valuable to you, then you should support us to provide this benefit as we go forward. As fundraisers, we are the front line of our organization's ability to get back to work as soon as possible. I've delivered 12 tasks, but I think we just shouldn't overthink this. Your donors know what's going on. Our job is simply to give them the opportunity to say yes. And at the end of this webinar, we all just need to get back to work and do precisely that. So with that, I'm going to invite Michaela back. I'm going to invite you one last time. If you want a PDF of all of these slides, text the word tasks to 66866. You'll get a bounce back message that asks for your email. You'll get in my email that you'll get these slides. You'll get an evaluation form, which among other things will ask you, if we had 24 more minutes, what else would you want to talk to? What else do you want to talk about? Because I'm developing that sequel webinar right now. I'll send you the invitation to the Facebook group, and I'll even send you a copy of the video of what the TV station did about my hashtag 10 neighbors, which is just fun and it's a cute little diversion. So with that, Michaela, thanks for the opportunity, and I'm happy to open this up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Matt. This was really fantastic. Really appreciate you doing this for our community. So now we do have space for questions and answers. You can either, if you know how, you can raise your hand via the chat function, or you can type your questions directly into chat, and then we'll go from there. So yes, once again, thank you so much, Matt. This was fantastic. Does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna give you guys a couple seconds to type because I know that was a lot of information. Okay, well, I had a question. Oh, Courtney said something. Thanks, Courtney. Can you talk more about the need to safeguard our donor management systems? Any specific vulnerabilities you suggest we look for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are two vulnerabilities that I really care about. The one is simply the security of your system. Think about whoever is accessing that information right now is working from home. They may be accessing it from someone else's computer, a computer not in your office, a computer that they've borrowed from a spouse or from a child or whoever. And so I worry about passwords being retained there, and I worry about who else has access to the information that you store, and who else can go in, frankly, and make mischief for that information. It's another reason to have the backup here. So the security of your information is not just about the physical security, it's about the access to security as well. The thing that I think I care about most of all is this is a moment where a donor can't have any lack of confidence in your organization. So if you are sloppy, or if someone does something untoward, and a month from now, you have to send out an announcement to all of your audience members and all of your donors and say, our system was compromised in some way, that could be a critical failure. And that could cause someone who was thinking about making a significant contribution for you to say, you know what, I think I just need to hold off for a moment because they clearly don't have their act together. So I know it sounds petty to say that in this dire moment that we need to go back and look at our accounting policies and our recognition policies. But the fact is, if you were sloppy or just lazy about any of that in the past, this is the moment where that weakness can actually kill you. And so take the time right now while things are a little quieter, and it'll take a day. Spend the day. It's a worthwhile investment to make sure that your processes are clear and that all of your team knows their responsibilities to that process as well.
Thank you. If anyone else has any questions, we're still have a couple more minutes of his time. I'm going to jump in with a question. You brought up vision statements, which I thought was really fantastic. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on how practical that can be right now. I know a lot of people want to focus on granular things, but how vision statements can be really helpful.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me that question is, isn't a vision statement kind of an ethereal kind of thing? Anyone have a vision statement that they know off the top of their head? Even if it's not the full thing, just kind of what the nub of it is. I would love it if you would type it into the chat and share it for a moment. I often see from theater companies, vision statements are about inspiring people or provoking thought or sparking joy or I guess that's Marie Kondo who sparks joy. But those kinds of ethereal things. As we've talked about this in some of the other webinars, what I find is that somewhere in your vision statement, there is that little nub. And it's enough that it says that, if we want to bring people together and inspire creative thinking, then I want you, even if you can't do the things your mission statement says, like we're going to perform theater of, dramatic theater or thoughtful theater or whatever it is, if you can bring it back to the essence of what your vision is, then I'm going to ask you a simple question. Wherever you perform, is there a grocery store down the street? Is there a pharmacy? Is there a healthcare provider? Is there some organization there who frankly could just use some volunteer help in this moment to stock their shelves or empty their trash or whatever is the thing that needs to be done? And could your company in this moment just be a good neighbor and help out an essential business that someone else who's going on who could just use a hand, with the idea that you're living up to your vision, you're exercising your vision in this moment? Share that with your donors. Let your donors know that this is what it means to be your company in this moment. This is not a permanent change for you. We're not saying you're getting out of the theater business. We're just saying that in this moment, this is the best expression of what we do. And donor, your contribution to us in this moment allows us to continue the vision of our company, even as we have to pause the mission of our company in some way.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Mark asked a question. Do we have time for one more question?
Sure, as much as you want.
Great. Mark asked, what would you suggest for a company that may have already led with desperation fundraising tactics, especially knowing that they may be facing a type of situation for the next few months?
Okay, well, Mark, you asked the $64,000 question or the $118,000 question or whatever anyone's particular deficit is.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, well, Mark, you did it. Congratulations. So look, here's the point that I would make about desperation. I'm not going to sit here from Scottsdale, Arizona and prescribe that no one should be making a desperation call at this moment. You're going to have to decide that for yourself. But I am going to make the claim that desperation should be used on a very judicious basis. And here's what I mean. Among your donors, my guess is that there are very few who are actually in a situation to make a difference on your desperate situation. Maybe there are two or three. And you should know, a few years ago, I served as an interim executive director for a big theater company. And we hit that. We had Friday payrolls where we didn't have the cash. And I had to call a donor and ask if they would put up a sizable amount of money just to help us get through that week's payroll. And I had to do that a couple of times, in fact. So desperation is clearly something you need to do, but I would really suggest limiting it to just the 2 or 3 donors who are in a position to actually help you. I'm really wary about sending out a message of desperation broadly to all of your donors or putting out a press release on it and sending it out to your community at large, because from my way of thinking, that's poisoning the well. Because for the person who is willing to make a $50 or a $100 donation, your message of desperation just sends them a message that says, hey, this may be putting good money after bad, and there's a lot of other needs out there that may be more important, and maybe I should support that. I hate undermining ourselves. But conversely, if you have a big donor who is willing to help you out, even if they can't do the full amount that you need, if they can do a matching grant or a challenge grant and say, hey, if you'll raise $25,000, I will match you with another $25,000, then that is no longer a desperation message that you're sending out. That's an opportunity message. That's a look at this wonderful support we have, and it wants to know that there are other people like you who are going to rise to the occasion in $20, $50, whatever increments. That's a positive message. And I want you to be on the side of positive messages. And I really worry about these desperation messages. I think that I understand how organizations get addicted to them. And especially if you know that you're going to be facing this type of situation for the next few months, then find yourself a strategic answer to this that takes care of it over time, that builds up the support that you need. And I guess, Mark, I feel like I should go one more step, which is, if you don't have that kind of a donor, if you don't really have someone that you can go to, is it still okay? Does that mean you should go and do a desperation message to everyone? Perhaps it does. At the last moment, you certainly don't want to fail feeling like you didn't spend all of your ammunition. I get the reason for that. But boy, a desperation message publicly is really the last message that you send out before failure, because you just can't keep doing it.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions?
Sure, go ahead, Courtney. I see you have another question. You said something about avoiding yes or no choices when we reach out to donors. Do you have any other examples? So I have very few examples in this. Reaching out, avoiding yes or no choices is, I said it's just give folks a way to say yes. Even if it's something as simple as, it's okay to ask me again sometime soon. Let me give you an example. Our email systems don't have this functionality, but I wish they did. And I keep talking about this everywhere, and someone's going to invent this. I want a pause button or a hold button or something where a donor or an audience member, it's an acknowledgement button. It's the button that says, yes, I've heard your plea, or I've seen your marketing for that event, and I'm kind of interested, but not at this exact moment. And so they could hit pause on it, and your system would know to hold off for 30 days or 60 days before talking to them again about this or whatever comes next. You see, my point is that when someone says, no one ever says no to us. They just don't respond. And so what's easy for us to do is just click the button in MailChimp that says resend to anyone who hasn't opened this email, or resend to anyone who hasn't clicked on this email. So we keep bombarding people with the same question when they've already made the decision for themselves. Now, I know we have to send it several times to get it viewed. I get all of that. So what I'm looking for is, when you send out a message, find a way to get people to say yes to something. Even if that something is, would you like to be on our newsletter? Would you like to get a special COVID-19 newsletter from us, a special awareness thing? Something that gives you permission to have an ongoing conversation. Because if all they do is, if they just don't respond, then all you're left is just trying to throw your message at them time and time again. And that's going to get old real quick. Give them something to say yes to, so when you follow up, you can say, thanks for inviting this communication. Here's the insights that we want to share. Let me brainstorm one other one, Michaela. I've never seen this. And it's kind of the thing that, this is why I created the Facebook group, because I would love to brainstorm these things out loud. There are no consultants who have a list of best practices for stuff like this. We're all inventing it on the fly, just like you are. But it makes me wonder, how would our donors respond if we said, would you like to sign up for another email list in which we're just going to share with you a weekly report of what's going on, what we're doing in the company, but we will never make an ask from that feed. It's purely informational. It's purely about the beneficiary's perspective, and it's just a pure message in that way. I wonder if people would be willing to sign up for it if we promise not to ask. We can inform, we can educate, but we would never turn it around. And that's the kind of thing that I would put a question like that out there, and I would just wish for all of you to just debate this a little bit and say, well, that idea sucks, but we think about it from this other perspective, and we could inspire each other to come up with something incredibly creative.
Well, thank you for that. That's really interesting. I'm definitely going to go and join that Facebook group to join those debates.
Great, thanks.
I want to do a last call for any questions, but I do also want to be respectful of Matt's time and all of your time. So last call for questions. Crystal says me. Okay.
Go for it, Crystal.
I'm going to unmute you, Crystal.
Oh, good. We can hear from Crystal. I'd love to hear from Crystal.
Ooh. Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Crystal, we can hear you.
Hey, hi guys. My question is, other than creating digital content, are there other ways or examples you've seen in the art community of companies staying relevant during this time?
Other than creating digital content, you know what? I'm going to think for a second. Let me throw this out. Does anyone have any examples they want to share? We're a small group today, so I don't mind unmuting a few people if you just want to talk about some of this as well. If anyone has an example to share, I would love to see it. While you're thinking about that, sorry, while I'm thinking about it, while I'm thinking about it, let me say something. I saw an email that came out of Arizona Theater Company. Again, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's hometown stuff. But there was something in the email that just made me feel that they were working all the different angles. And if you want, I'll send Crystal. I'll send Michaela an email link to what I saw from ATC, which she can share with all of you as well. But it wasn't about digital content, but it was a way about thinking about their work from a number of different perspectives and finding other ways to involve their audience members and supporters in the work that the organization is doing. And I can't remember all of the details of it, but it was a really interesting framework with which to work. Anyone else have any examples that they want to share?
And this is specifically of theater companies staying relevant in other ways besides
digital
content.
Yeah.
This is Crystal again.
Go for it.
I see that CTG did a digital panel with a bunch of artistic directors in our region. I thought that was wonderful to convene folks. And they also created a page that has kind of digital content specifically that they're creating now during this crisis. And the organization that I'm with, the Unison Sarai Nazarian Center for the Performing Arts, our executive director is sending out weekly emails called his Director Selects, and he's selecting digital content that's out there already, just to highlight to our members and donors and such. So bringing other content to our members.
That's terrific. I think I've also seen, I can't think of who off the top of my head, but I've seen examples of theater companies doing new play readings or excerpts from new play readings as a way to whet the appetite of their supporters in these moments as well, perhaps even as a preview of things that they're considering putting on their stage in the future.
And for LA theater folks, I've definitely seen like Rogue Artist Hyper Ensemble is doing classes. So is A Noise Within. I know After Hours Theater Company did a digital production shot from multiple locations. A lot of people are doing blog posts. So I think a lot of the community is getting creative with how they are creating things. And going back to that collaborative marketing model, I do see that theater companies are promoting each other, and I think that's fantastic, which is kind of our goal behind On Stage, is collaboratively promote these events, which make it a little more out there than considered like quote unquote traditional theater, because we can't create traditional theater right now. But yeah, CTG's panel discussion was really fantastic. And I know even the Geffen is trying to do like an immersive at-home magic show. So I'm proud of how this community is trying to be as creative as possible.
You know, one of the things that I might also suggest is, this is out of my ballpark. I'm not an artistic director type at all, but you know, we know that that our first responders and our healthcare workers, they're under incredible stress right now. And you can imagine that in 6 months or a year from now, the news stories of their PTSD and the ramifications of this are going to be immense. So how do we take our theater companies today and plan for that eventuality? And I don't know what the answer is. I'm sure there are people who will be writing plays on this topic, but how do we use the benefit of our skills to deal with that kind of a tough situation? Now, I'll give you my example. This was actually my awakening. After the event, when the events of 9/11 happened, I was the marketing director at Scottsdale Center for the Arts here in Arizona. And gosh, just maybe 2 months after 9/11, it occurred to us, remember the moment, we were all thinking, how do we thank our first responders and how do we acknowledge them? And I arranged through my office, I contacted the police chief and the fire chief at the city of Scottsdale, and I got permission from them to send all of our first responders a coupon for a free pair of tickets to any performance at Scottsdale Center for the Arts in the season. And there were no restrictions on it whatsoever. They could sit front row. As many people could go into the performance as possible. It didn't matter. All we cared about was this gesture of thanks to the first responders in our community. I don't know what that equivalent looks like in this moment, but our companies should be a part of the solution that is going to be needed for another crisis that we can see is certainly going to be brewing.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective. I know there are some theater companies that have shifted a lot of their resources, like you mentioned, to helping fight this crisis. So I know Ophelia's Jump has started making masks. Several theater costumers have made masks. Theater of Note has a board member that runs a distillery, and she's used it to start making hand sanitizer. We have people that are organizing food banks. And I think it really goes to show, like what you're saying, that these theater artists at their core are here to help their community. So,
right. And the thing that I just want to emphasize is all of these things go back to this question of what's your organization's opportunity to contribute to the recovery and health and collaborative spirit of your community. If you're on the side of answering this question, there are donors who will support the work that you do. When we're out of this crisis, when we find the new normal, we'll come back to your organization's mission and the importance of that mission and why donors should support that mission. In these raw times, your mission is to contribute to recovery, health, and collaborative spirit in your community.
Well, thank you so much. We're about at the hour mark. If there's anyone else, we can go ahead. If you have any other questions that you think of later, you can either reach out to Matt directly, you can reach out to LASTAGE Alliance, and we'll get that information to him. But thank you all so much for being here. We love creating this for you guys on a weekly basis, and you guys keep showing up. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Matt, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Hey, everyone, stay home, stay safe. And hey, here's a special benefit. If you fill out my little evaluation form, that'll come to you with the email. At the end of the evaluation form, when you hit submit, you'll also get my personal cell phone number. And if you want to just call me, if I didn't answer your question specifically, or if you just want to bounce some ideas off of someone with fresh perspective, or at least different perspective, I invite you to give me a call. I would love to talk about the challenges that you have. I'm sitting here at home, and I'm always looking for ways to be productive. So thanks for the opportunity. Michaela, thank you, and thank LASTAGE Alliance. The work that you do is just so important. I have such great respect. And the folks at LASTAGE Alliance were largely responsible for helping me launch the service organization here in Arizona, which we launched in 2003. And so I've known your organization for a long time, and it's just a real pleasure to be able to support you. Keep doing the great work you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. We'll have this recorded and up on our site soon. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. But thank you all so much, and stay safe.
Thanks, Matt.